Yes, I did meet with Minister Sajjan on March 1, 2018. Yes, I did directly tell him about an allegation of inappropriate sexual behavior made against the Chief of Defence Staff.
So he wouldn't even look at the evidence, the physical evidence that you had?
No.
He says he told the Defence Minister Harjit Sajjan of allegations of inappropriate behavior against the Chief of the Defence Staff, General Jonathan Vance, back in March of 2018. He even alleged, as you just saw, that the Defence Minister refused to look at the evidence. That was explosive testimony today from the former military ombudsman, Gary Walbourne. It all pertains to the former Chief of the Defence Staff, General Jonathan Vance, who is now the subject of a House of Commons committee probe over allegations that he engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship with an officer under his command. Vance denies the allegations, but Mr. Walbourne's testimony today that he told the Minister of Defence, Minister Sajjan, about these allegations in 2018 directly contradicts what Minister Sajjan has said. In fact, just this Sunday on CTV's Question Period, Minister Sajjan told me he was shocked when the allegations first emerged weeks ago on Global News and that he never heard them back in 2018. Here's what he said.
Let me make it even more clear, okay? Regardless of rank, regardless of position, even at that time, that if any formal allegations were brought forward that we could take action on, I can assure you that we would be taking very strong action, just as we're doing right now. What you see right now is no different what will be happening before. I have absolutely no tolerance for things like this. That's what no tolerance means here.
Okay, so who's telling the truth here? Minister Sajjan says if he'd heard any allegations, there would have been an immediate investigation. But there was no immediate investigation. He says he didn't hear it. The former ombudsman says he was very explicit about it. What do MPs make of the contradiction? Where does this leave the investigation, not only into General Vance, but questions for the Defence Minister? MPs on that committee who heard Mr. Walbourne's testimony join us now. We are joined by, I think we've got, let's see who's on the committee here. Okay, well, we've got Ms. McCrimmon from the Liberal Party. I can't see everybody. I know Mr. Bazan is here, and Randall Garrison from the NDP. Okay, sorry, everybody. I'm just having a little trouble here. Mr. Bazan, let me just start with you. Obviously, a contradiction between what Minister Sajjan said and what Mr. Walbourne said. What do you make of the contradiction?
Well, you know, I was angry before, after Major Brennan came forward with her allegations and her story of sexual misconduct by General Vance. I think we're irate now, knowing that the minister wasn't transparent and honest with the media, with us at committee, saying that, you know, what you just had the quote there, essentially, Mr. Sajjan saying, you know, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, when he pushed away the evidence that Gary Walbourne tried to give him in March 1st, 2018. 3 years ago that he had these allegations, and Minister Vance, or Minister Sajjan did nothing on those allegations against General Vance. Now, you know, he talks about zero tolerance for sexual misconduct, regardless of rank. Guess what? Those are all empty words. He's never acted upon any of it. And, you know, the real question comes down now to Prime Minister Trudeau, who also says he's the self-proclaimed feminist prime minister. He has a minister that sat on his hands for 3 years and did nothing about General Vance's sexual misconduct allegations. And so he needs to answer, how can this conduct be acceptable within his cabinet by one of his own ministers? And I think that is very disconcerting.
Mr. Bazan, hold on. I've just got a statement released from Harjit Sajjan, the Defence Minister. I'm going to read it to you, and then Mr. Garrison, I want you to react. Quote, this is the new statement. I disagree with parts of the testimony that occurred in committee today. As I have stated, he writes, I was as shocked as everyone else at the allegations that were made public last month. I can assure the committee and all Canadians that any allegations that were brought forward were very quickly put forward to the proper authorities while respecting the need to protect the privacy of any individuals involved. Any suggestion that I have done otherwise is wrong. Okay, Mr. Garrison, now it is a he said, The Mr. Walbourne today said, I brought evidence in 2018 in March. I told the Minister of Defence now said, I disagree, didn't happen. What do you say?
Well, I think now the minister has to come back to committee and testify about the differences between these two versions of the truth. I have no reason at all to disbelieve the military ombudsman. He has no skin in this game. He's been a very honorable public servant. He did a great job as military ombudsman. He clearly said that he offered concrete evidence of sexual misconduct to the minister, and the minister refused to look at it. So I'd like the minister to come back to committee, and that's what I would have moved for had the meeting not been abruptly adjourned, and explain to us how these two things match up. And the other question then we have, I guess, is similar to the Conservatives, and that is, does the Prime Minister still have confidence in a minister who took no action when he clearly knew about sexual misconduct by the highest military officer for more than 2 years?
Okay, Karen McCrimmon, a Liberal MP, let me bring you into the conversation.
All right,
you know, I watched that testimony today by Mr. Walbourne. It was very definitive. He had a very detailed memory of the meeting. He alleged that he had brought evidence. He alleged the Minister of Defence didn't even bother to look at it. He alleged that the minister knew exactly the details of the allegations against General Vance on March 1st, 2018. Now the Defence Minister said that never happened. What do you make of these contradictory testimonies?
You know what I didn't hear today, Evan, was talking about the people who were impacted. And I don't know what anybody would be able to do if someone doesn't want to come forward. Listen, and the last thing I would want to do is to have someone harassing them to come forward if they didn't want to come forward. I'm going to be honest with you there. That's what seems to have been forgotten. It should be all about the people, men and women, who are impacted by improper behavior. And so I get it. So if the minister says he took it to the proper authority, it's my understanding that as a GIC appointment, it goes to the PCO. And it sounds like he did the right thing. He took it to the PCO.
Did he? I'm just asking because
the other thing that came out, and I think it was even the ombudsman who said it, he said, was it actionable? He said, no. So what are you supposed to do? You take the information, you give it, you send it to the higher authority, but if the higher authority, if it's not actionable, that's the challenge. What do you do? And that's why we need.
May I just ask you a question?
Cultures. Sure.
Okay, but you literally just said you take the information. Mr. Walbourne's testimony was he literally didn't take the information. He ignored it, number one. Minister Sajjan told me he'd never heard about it. He didn't say, I heard about it and it was actionable, or I heard about it and as the minister I took it to the proper authorities, or as a minister he didn't call a board of inquiry. By the way, he has the right, he has the legal authority to do so. It sounds like he did nothing. So are you saying, what, that he got the evidence and a Minister of Defence can get serious allegations against the Chief of the Defence Staff and just do nothing, and that's the appropriate response?
No, the appropriate response is to take it to the PCO, because it's a governor and council appointment and they have to run it, not the minister.
Wrong.
The PCO has to run it. And it's all about, and remember what he said. He said, when he heard the allegations that came out last month, he was as shocked as anybody. Now, so everyone is conflating that what happened on the issue that came up on the 1st March is the same issue that came up in January. Nobody knows that to be true. They could be two different issues, but everyone is assuming it's the same one.
Okay, let me just go to Mr. Bazan, but I'm going to read something, Mr. Bazan, if I could, just to answer that. This is what Mr. Walbourne told committee today. Yes, I did directly tell him about an allegation of inappropriate behavior against the Chief of the Defence Staff. I did tell the minister what the allegation was. I reached into my pocket to show him the evidence I was holding. He pushed back from the table and said, no. I'm just repeating what happened. Please respond to that, Ms. McCrimmon.
He didn't want it because he was not the person who's going to be able to do anything about it. Think of all the governor and council appointments in this country. There's lots of them, all of the port authorities and harbor boards and all these other things. So if there's a problem with a governor and council appointment, it goes to the PCO. He was doing what he should be doing. He was sending it to the right authority.
Okay, Mr. Bazan, can you respond to that, sir?
Well, I'm just, continue to be surprised that the Liberals are going to try to spin and contradict what Gary Walbourne said at committee and what his responsibilities are under the National Defence Act, and try to protect Minister Sajjan rather than protect the people that serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. First and foremost, the minister is responsible for the goodwill and management and the conduct of members of the Canadian Armed Forces. The Chief of Defence Staff reports only to him. He may be an Order in Council appointment, but he reports to the minister. The minister, as we already learned from Colonel Michel Drapeau and other legal experts, could have exercised Section 45 of the Defence Act to start a board of inquiry. He could have asked General Vance to step aside as Chief of Defence Staff so that the CF National Investigation Service could do their job and do a thorough investigation. He had so many different levers in front of him that he could have pulled, and yet he went running to PCO and asked them to do the work. And we know the PCO doesn't have the investigative capabilities or authority to do it either. So it all comes back, Evan, that Minister Sajjan abrogated his responsibility as Minister of Defence, that he turned a blind eye for 3 years. Let's not forget, this went on for 3 years. And instead of investigating General Vance, he investigated Gary Walbourne instead and forced him out.
So here's the question.
I want Randall Garrison. Hang on. Let me just get Randall Garrison. And I just want our viewers to follow the bouncing ball here, because there seems to be two things. Maybe you can help me understand this, sir. If Mr. Sajjan has told me and told your committee that he never heard any allegations, and if he did, there would have been an immediate investigation, like we're seeing with the current Chief of the Defence Staff, Mr. Admiral MacDonald. But now we're saying that, wait, he did know and he passed it over to the PCO, the Privy Council office. Which is it? What do you make of all this contradictory evidence, Mr. Garrison?
Well, I think you rightly point to the current situation where, unfortunately, we now have a second Chief of Defence Staff accused of sexual misconduct, and this time he's been suspended. So if we can suspend the current Chief of Defence Staff for sexual misconduct, I don't understand why that same action wasn't possible 3 years ago when these allegations came forward against General Vance. So there's an obvious contradiction here between the two cases. Can the minister say he handed over to PCO and washed his hands of it? No, he can't. He's the Minister of Defence. He has many powers of the Defence Act which he could have used, including starting an inquiry. And when Ms. McCrimmon says the victim would never come forward, Mr. Walbourne testified to that, and he said he was convinced that if there was a proper process in place, the complainant would have been willing to come forward. It wasn't actionable as long as she was worried about being re-victimized and repercussions on her. When she had those assurances, Mr. Walbourne told us quite clearly he believed that she would have come forward.
And that's exactly what we don't want. Exactly. We need women, we need the people who come forward to be treated the way they want to be treated. If they say they don't want to lay allegations, don't try and cajole them into laying allegations. Don't try and cajole them into filing a formal complaint or an informal complaint. If they say they want to lay charges, lay allegations, lay a complaint, fine, you do it. But then you need to respect what these people want.
I don't want to get.
Can I imagine? Let me just
focus here.
Don't do it.
Okay, that's a very fair point, but I don't want to stray into the hypothetical. Can we just try to really focus on what's at hand here? The Minister of Defence has told me and told all of you and told Canadians he never heard any allegations against General Vance, and if he had, he would have taken some kind of action. Now the former ombudsman says, I told him there were allegations. He didn't want to look at the evidence, and he is now denying that he heard anything. So I want to understand, just on that, in your view, Ms. McCrimmon, did the Defence Minister, Harjit Sajjan, hear allegations against the Chief of the Defence Staff in 2018? We can debate what action he should have taken, but let's establish a fact. The Minister of Defence said he heard no allegations. The Ombudsman saying he said explicit allegations. Who do you believe?
He said that he was shocked when he heard the allegations that came out last month. That's what he said. So people are saying that the allegations that came out last month are what the Ombudsman asked him. you know, ask him about that. But he can't tell you because he's protecting somebody's confidentiality. And that's the challenge with doing something like this. And I tell you what, we do need, and this is the good thing that will come out of this challenging time, people are starting to understand that we do need cultural change here in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was a member for 31 years. Yes, I know we need change. And we have the opportunity to actually make that change happen. But
but that's not the debate here. I get that. I don't think we're on the lessons learned phase yet. I got just 30 seconds. Clearly, the Minister of Defence disagrees with what Gary Walbourne said today because he put out a statement. I'm just trying to figure this out. If he heard, you're suggesting that even if he heard allegations and he accepted them, doing whatever they were, he could have just done nothing but pass them by. You're happy if the Minister of Defence hears allegations against the Chief of the Defence Staff, like Gary Walbourne suggests, and does nothing? Is that, you're saying that's acceptable?
He can be the one, the PCO can be the one to call an independent investigation. If there's enough
So can the minister. The minister has that power as well with words of inquiry.
The PCO can do that. And for a governor and council appointment, it's the PCO who should be doing that.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. We've got a statement now from Minister Sajjan. Karen McCrimmon, James Bazan, and Randall Garrison. We're going to pick this up later. I'm sure we'll have you back. I really appreciate all three of you joining us today. Thank you so much.